Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. I can't understand how dude is so inconsiderate to push past the line and all, but had the thought to show up at the restaurant in person to make the reservation days in advance? That guy should have known not to mess with someone's mother when that person is watching. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Don't mess with the lady using a walker. My mom was handicapped due to a stroke, and she had to use a walker to get anywhere. Her and my dad loved this local seafood restaurant. It was their favorite place to go to dinner. It was a really popular restaurant and was always crowded. It had a long line to get in. We get to the restaurant and my dad drops us off near the front and he goes to park. The line was long as usual to get in. My mom and I waited for what seemed like forever to get to the hostess stand. My dad had come in at this point and my poor mom had to stand up the entire time because they had no seats to sit and wait. We finally get to the front of the line and this guy pushes his way to the front and starts yelling that he needs to make a reservation. That the last time he was there, they had screwed up his reservation. Meanwhile, we'd waited in this line and finally made it. My poor mom standing up this whole time and this guy just takes over. The hostess doesn't say not one word to us. She just lets him take over and takes his reservation info for 9 people for the end of the week. She never once said, "I'm sorry for the wait," or told him he had to wait his turn, nothing. I was so pissed. My parents didn't go out a lot. They would look forward to going to this restaurant so much when they were able to go out. It was difficult for my mom to get around with the walker. They usually would wait until one of us could go with them to assist my mom. The guy was so rude, so obnoxious, and so entitled, I was livid. So the next day, I called the restaurant and canceled his reservation. I remembered everything he said, and I pretended to be his wife. Lesson to be learned, don't mess with my mom, God rest her soul. She didn't have many opportunities to enjoy life after her stroke, and that guy messed with her. My only regret is that I couldn't go back to the night of the reservation to see his reaction. Edit. I should have included this. We did have a reservation, however, the line to get to the front to give our name was incredibly long. Normally, she could have sat down on one of the benches while I stood in line, but there were no seats available. No one offered to give her a seat either. She also couldn't sit in the bar because the bar stools were too high for her to get up on. My mom was partially paralyzed from her stroke. It was difficult for her to get around, and I would never, ever deny her the opportunity to go to her favorite restaurant. Both my mom and dad knew what I did because I told them. They both laughed and said I was crazy. They both wished they could be there on Friday night to watch his reaction too. And our second story. You cannot leave with the TV. This happened to me some years back while I was still an undergrad at university in the UK. I'd ordered a 32-inch TV for my flat from Tesco and opted to collect the TV from the nearest store that did pickup/collection. Cool. I was happy to be going to get a flat-screen TV to connect and play with my PS3. This was in 2008. Little did I know the trouble that was waiting for me. This Tesco store had the collections area near the entrance before you walk some few meters to the supermarket. So both the collections area and the supermarket are in the same massive room without any demarcation except a few meters of space. I went to collect the TV and I had to present the confirmation of purchase email. The email's important for later, in order to collect it. I got the TV in its packaging with no hassle. I decided to also do some grocery shopping, and so I kept the TV, which was quite heavy, in a trolley and went to the supermarket area. I finished the grocery shopping and go to the till. I put the groceries on the counter, but the cashier then asks about the TV. I reply that I've already paid for it as I bought it online and collected it from the collections area. But for some reason, she says that it's possible that I took it from the supermarket shelf. They also sell TVs in the supermarket area. I then presented the confirmation of purchase email as proof that I bought it online. She then says with a loud and angry voice, "I cannot read the email and it's not a receipt. You cannot leave with the TV unless you pay for it." It was at that point that I lost my temper and told her that she's quite daft for trying to say that I was trying to steal the TV, which I had already paid for. I also pointed out that there must be CCTV cameras so they could easily check where I got the TV from. Her supervisor, another woman, came along and supported her by saying that since I did not have the receipt, I did not get it from the collections area. The supervisor repeated that I could not leave with the TV. I quickly noticed that almost everyone was starting to stare, and also that a large queue was starting to form, as there were only 2 tills open at the time, and I was holding up one of the tills. A quick idea for malicious compliance came into my head. They said that I can't leave with my TV, and so I will stay. I then just said, "Make your move," and kept quiet. The queue kept piling up, and to my luck, the queue at the other till was not moving fast as well. So after about 15 to 20 awkward minutes of angry customers mumbling about the holdup behind me and the supervisor deliberating what to do, 2 more staff members come over to see what's happening. They talk with the supervisor, and then she comes over and asks to see my TV. As she's looking at it, realization dawns on her face. I noticed her reaction, but didn't understand why. The supervisor noticed that a name, my name, was on the TV packaging, which meant that I actually bought it online. She then explained it to me and apologized in a very squeaky voice, probably because it was humbling for her. I was still angry, and so I told her that she was daft for not checking the packaging in the first place. The supervisor then left to get me a receipt from the collection area. The cashier, feeling foolish, just scanned my remaining grocery items silently with her head down. I left, but not without telling her that she should be more sensible in the future. However, it didn't end there. Apparently, the police were called sometime during the Shout Fest. The police arrived as soon as I collected my receipt from the supervisor at the collection area. After talking to the police warned the supervisor and another staff that they could be easily charged for unlawful detention had the matter escalated. They had no proof that I stole anything, and they chose not to confirm with the collection area in the first place whether I'd bought the TV. But they still chose to say that I should not leave. And our last story. They screwed me out of my pay. I screwed them out of their company. Many years ago, I got a job with a marketing company during phone deregulation. It was the Wild West, and a lot of small, long-distance companies sprang up, all trying to get a piece of the pie. Eventually, they all got bought up by the bigger fish, but at the time, they were all paying hired gun marketing firms very well to score contracts for them to lock people in. I got a job with one of those marketing firms, a new age capitalism company that insisted we all do yoga and breathing exercises while they rang a little bell and gave us affirmations about how many contracts we were all going to sell and how much money we'd all make. The job was 100% commission, but I was always good at sales, so I looked at the pay scale and noticed that it was exponential, presumably to entice people to work hard with impossible payouts. We were allowed to work as many or as few hours as we wanted, with the payout based on your weekly sales numbers. I decided I'd give it a shot for 1 week to see how much I could realistically make before deciding whether I was willing to put up with the tasteless vegan snacks and mandatory voluntary yoga regime. For the next week, I pushed myself as hard as I could. For 7 straight days, I worked 14-plus-hour days every single day and used every trick and technique I'd learned doing sales to score as many contracts as I possibly could. I figured this would tell me my maximum possible income and could decide on that basis whether to stay. At the end of the week, I had blown everyone else out of the water. In fact, I'd not just gotten more contracts than anyone there had ever seen in a week, I'd gotten more than any of them had seen in a month. Because of the exponential scale, I realized that I was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money, $10K plus a week. They'd never expected anyone could actually hit those kinds of numbers. Coming in the next week, expecting a huge payday, I ended up with about 5% of what I expected. They told me there were problems with a lot of my contracts and that I would be allowed to fix them and submit them a few at a time over the next several weeks. These problems were things like an apostrophe wasn't quite clear or the dash in someone's phone number was slightly crooked. They were going to screw me. That night, I got a phone call from the company's office manager, Frank, who wanted to meet up for a drink. Curious, I agreed. Over beers, Frank told me that the owners of the company were in a panic because I would have bankrupted them. He said they spread out all my contracts on the floor of the office, then they crawled over them, inspecting each one and trying to figure out if I was committing some kind of fraud. When they comprehended that all my contracts were legit, they decided they had no choice but to screw me over. Frank told me he realized at that point that if they'd screw me, they'd screw him too, and besides, he was tired of doing yoga. He asked me if I'd be interested in going into business with him and go head-to-head with his bosses. I thought it sounded intriguing, but I asked him how he thought we could compete. Frank explained that he'd found out they didn't actually have the contract for our city, They were acting as independent contractors for another company who had the contract to market the service in an entirely different city. They were poaching here because the person who did have the contract wasn't actively using it. We put together a pitch and approached the guy with the real contract, Joe, and told him about the people poaching his turf. We agreed that we'd split with him, we'd take the upfront money for each contract, and he'd get the back-end money down the road. It was a good deal for everyone. So Joe contacted the phone company and had them threaten the poachers with a big lawsuit if they didn't stop. A week later, Frank and I strolled into the offices of our old employer. Most of the furniture and all the yoga mats was gone, and there was just a table, a couple of filing cabinets, and a file box with the final pay envelopes for everyone. I made a show of counting my money to make sure it was all there, and the two owners, husband and wife, told Frank and I bitterly that they had to take cash advances on their credit cards for this money and asked me if I felt guilty for destroying their lives. I smiled and said nope and left. Our marketing company made us a lot of money over the year until the company got bought up by Sprint and the gravy train ended. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.